back in 2014. We're just about right. This is the running of race 4. There goes the light there racing, and near the inside, Better to Be Tricky bounced out to lead early over In Transit. And Truth and Courage. They were followed sliding across from out wide to take up a forward position as Lochinvar. Back to the inside is Better Than Best, and they were being followed by Jake Sportsrider. Next of all then, about 2 away, was Better's Pocket. And last of all on settling down is Idle Hands. They've gone inside the 2,000 metres, and the leader was Better to Be Tricky, but taking it on now, Lochinvar really keen to get on with it and goes up to head them off. In third spot, Truth and Courage, and In Transit now 3 pegs. Followed next of all Jake Sportrider, and further back then on the inside of those runners is Better Than Best, followed by Idle Hands, and Better's Pocket is back near the tail of the field. That's the order as they work into the home stretch, and they'll run down past the mile peg here, and Lochinvar is the leader. That lead time 49.8. Second at the moment was Better to Be Tricky, and third Truth and Courage, and In Transit now 3 pegs fourth. Next is Jake Sportsrider in a good spot, followed further back then to Better Than Best over Better's Pocket, and last of all Idle Hands. Only about 5 lengths cover the field, and they're racing tight and compact and with no real speed on. The leader is Lochinvar leaving the straight. Shows out from Truth and Courage almost to its wheel, and third is Better to Be Tricky. Jake Sportrider is next on the outside there of In Transit, followed further back then to on the outside Better's Pocket. Better Than Best, and Idle Hands is last. 30.3 was the first quarter of the last mile, and they run their way down the back stretch. 1,000 metres left to go, and the leader is still Lochinvar, just on the steel a little bit here. Leads out by about 3 parts Truth and Courage, Better to Be Tricky. Next on the outside, Jake Sportsrider, followed then on the inner by In Transit, followed the trailing trio of Better's Pocket, Better Than Best, and Idle Hands. They've left the 800 metres behind them, 28.9 that second quarter, so 59.2 the half, and as they approach the 600 metres, Lochinvar led, 3 parts Truth and Courage, who's right up to it now. They were followed by Better to Be Tricky. Next of all on the outside, Jake Sportsrider, followed by In Transit, who needs to get away from the inside, and further back then to Better's Pocket as they run the turn. The leader, tickets just about out here on Lochinvar, being joined by Truth and Courage. Then came Better to Be Tricky, followed by further back then Jake Sportsrider getting into the clear, and In Transit has to come right to the outside to try and get into the fight. Jake Sportsrider goes up to quickly join Truth and Courage, Better to Be Tricky, trying to wind up as In Transit, still spots them a tidy start. On the inside, Better to Be Tricky, Jake Sportsrider, Better to Be Tricky, Jake Sportsrider dive, nearly a dead heat. Better to Be Tricky, Jake Sportsrider, Truth and Courage, In Transit 4 out very deep. Then came Better Than Best, followed by Better's Pocket, Idle Hands, and the early leader Lochinvar knocked up to finish last. 28.5, 155.7. This has made one big dive, Jake Sportsrider, and is right up in the photo here. Close go. You've got to lean to the one on the outside as a rule, and looking at that still, might have got there. It probably has. Yeah, there it is. Jake Sportsrider wins it. 5 beats 1. 5 beats 1.